Good day everyone, so it's now Genshin Impact 5.6, Escoffier has released and everyone has gotten the character, but don't let that distract you from Mavuika's awesome flaming hair. Yes, the Genshin devs still haven't patched it. Oh, it's still so good. Okay, I'll be honest. Kokomi, let's just show everyone. I didn't get Escoffier. I'm just gonna come clean. But still, even though I didn't get Escoffier and I have zero pulls and I've got zero desire to spend, I'm still gonna talk about Escoffier and Kokomi primarily in a Monohydro team. In other words, the team that you're gonna stand with Kokomi on field and do damage rather than support. Now, on my account, I've got a C2 Shalonen with a 60% cryo crit damage bonus. So my Shalonen kind of acts like a quasi Escoffier. So you can understand why on my account, for me personally, I'm not that interested in Escoffier because I don't think she's going to add that much. But hypothetically, if I had to have an Escoffier, how would she work with a Kokomi Monohydro team? On the one hand, you don't get that elemental damage bonus from Cinder City or from Kazuha, and that is the thing that you don't get from Escoffier, but you get higher rest rate and personal DPS. So in terms of the team's overall like DPS in a Monohydro team, what I suspect is things should even out roughly, give or take, depending on your artifacts and so on. But I don't think that Kokomi herself is gonna hit any new damage ceilings, and that's kind of important. I think with Escoffier, you're probably going to get slightly less personal damage from Kokomi, but other characters in the team, like your off-field Farina, hitting the enemies, Escoffier hitting the enemies, that's going to make up for the lack of damage bonus that you would have otherwise gotten had you just played Shilonen or Kazuha. And typically, how the Genshin Impact damage equation works is that you want to try and fill in as many independent multipliers as possible, because that's just going to give you more and more damage. So if you don't have that elemental damage bonus, then yes, on the rest rate part of the equation, you can score big, and certainly you'll score very big if your enemies have a very high cryo resistance or hydro resistance. That's typically when rest rate becomes really powerful, but in most ordinary cases, I do think that just having your Shalonen or Kazuha would be better in that team, and the same would apply for a Citroen Monohydro team. In fact, if you're like me and you've got a C2 or a C6 Citroen, the same would apply. In fact, you might be stacking too much rest rate instead of getting that independent multiplier, which would really stack well, because remember, a Citroen at C2 also does, I think, 35% hydro rest rate. So if you're now stacking that, you're getting like over 90% hydro rest rate, and that's just too much. It gets diminishing returns because I think it's divided in half after a certain point in the Genshin damage equation. There's a whole step function to rest rate. But in any case, so that's my take on it. I don't think it's really that crazy for Kokomi teams, but what Escoffier does allow you to do for the Kokomi Monohydro team is it allows you to free up your Kazuha or perhaps your Shalonen to run with your more modern DPS characters like Mavuika and Citlali on the other half of your Spiral Abyss. So I think that is a very, very good thing. The other thing to note with Escoffier is that she is predominantly meant to support cryo DPS characters. Typically, if you look at someone like Nuvalet, he is a Hydro carry, and the way in which Escoffier's talent is like worded, you can only use it with Hydro and cryo characters to get the max rest rate, and Nuvalet wants more reactions to get extra stacks on his Draconic Glory. I think that's the thing that it's named. I can't remember precisely, but certainly Nuvalet's not hitting his max damage potential. It's probably a very deliberate way the Genshin devs have tried to balance it. But regardless, I mean, I'm not really a Nuvalet player, so I'm just making some overall observations. One thing I do think about Escoffier, which is interesting, is that she might be like what Citlali is to Mavuika, an essential component to certain cryo DPS characters, and in that sense I think if you've watched the latest Vars 2 video you can kind of understand that Escoffier is both the best and perhaps the worst thing to happen to cryo, but certainly in the future as we get more and more cryo characters it's going to feel like Escoffier is a bit of a must. And as a Kokomi main, I'm not sure where that's going to put Kokomi in, because Kokomi herself, whilst being very good as a free support, she's not really gelling that well with Escoffier. Apart from being able, unless we get more and more enemies that you're able to freeze. But that's just my take on it. Again, these are just some initial thoughts. We'll look at things in the coming weeks, and if we need to revise this, we can do so. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching.